Erik Horne here with Jason Reid and Bill Rhoden, who are live in Las Vegas for Super Bowl week. And we are going to have a little conversation before the Super Bowl about Doug Williams. And you might be asking, well, why are we having a conversation about Doug Williams? Well, I'm going to let Jason and Bill tell you a little bit about the conversations that they've been having in Las Vegas about the former Super Bowl MVP of the Washington, I don't think I should say the name anymore, the Washington football team, when Doug Williams was a Super Bowl MVP, the first black quarterback to be a Super Bowl MVP. Jason, Bill, what are some of the conversations y'all are having in Vegas, and how did Doug Williams come up?
I'll let
Well,
Bill start it off.
yeah, well, Jason and I were at the Fritz Pollard Alliance banquet today, the 19th one. And as I was coming in, I saw Jason, then I saw Mel Blount. In fact, Mel Blount, who's the great Pittsburgh defensive back, Hall of Famer, and has always been one to bring up issues of any controversial issue. So he approached me. He said, "Yeah, man," and he was with Doug Williams. It was kind of awkward. He said, "Yeah, man, listen, Doug Williams in the Hall of Fame, and we want to start it now. We want to launch basically a media blitz to get him in the Hall of Fame." And Doug was there. And to be honest with you, I hadn't really thought about that, but he's talking about this is Black History Month, and they always are using Doug, his image in terms of, being the first African American to win the Super Bowl and all that. And so I thought about it. And, he talked about he's been talking to Hall of Fame voters, and, he wants to talk to Mike Wilbon and Stephen A. Smith and all that. So I thought about it. And I said, yeah. So then when I went in at the banquet, I asked Jason about it because, Jason's our, quarterback guru and, pro football guru. So I asked Jason what he thought about it. And Jason kind of gave me his response. But I thought, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you just do it by the numbers, clearly, like the numbers won't necessarily be there. But if you're doing it in another category, and I'll let Jason talk about that, it makes sense that Doug Williams should be in the Hall of Fame.
And Jason, I want to correct myself before you get started. Doug Williams wasn't the first black Super Bowl MVP. He was the first black quarterback to win Super Bowl MVP. I think that was my bad when I said that. But Jason, go on. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we were clear before we kept going that I made that mistake.
Well, I didn't even hear that it was that you made a mistake with it. But yeah, good that we corrected it if we did make a mistake. But just picking up on what Bill said, when he sat down at the table at the Fritz Pollard luncheon today, and he brought it up to me, it's something that other people have brought up to me in the past. As a matter of fact, Mel Blount brought it up to me last year, also in a very similar setting with Doug standing right next to him when he brought it up.
Right.
So this is obviously something that Mel is very comfortable doing because he really believes in this. And as Bill said, if you just look at the stats, like Doug Williams does not have the stats to be in the Hall of Fame as a standalone player. I mean, there's no argument there. But when we were walking into that luncheon today, one of the themes was the black quarterbacks in the NFL now and how they dominate the league. Lamar Jackson's going to pick up his second MVP award in 6 years here tomorrow night or tonight, actually. The honors are tonight, right?
Tonight,
yeah,
yeah.
so he's going to pick up his second MVP award in 6 years.
If he
Last
shows
year
up.
we had, I'm sorry?
If he shows up. That's enough.
Well, if he shows up. You had Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl last year. Patrick Mahomes is in the Super Bowl this year. You talk to anyone in this league, they'll tell you that Patrick Mahomes might not win the MVP, but he's the best player in the league. You look at these other young African-American quarterbacks in the league and the ones that are coming from college football. And while Doug wasn't the first black quarterback in the NFL, Doug was really the one who showed that, hey, if these guys are allowed to compete, they can compete on somewhat of a level playing field, that these guys can do great things. I mean, that performance that Doug Williams had against the Denver Broncos in that Super Bowl, it really was an incredible moment, not just in the NFL, but for the country, because black men supposedly were not supposed to be able to perform at that type of level in the biggest game. So when Bill brought it up to me today, and again, I had been in a situation with Mel Blount last year where he brought it up to me in front of Doug, as he did today with Bill. eh, I think it's a very legitimate discussion to have, not as a standalone player, but as someone who contributed so much to the game. And when you look at these young black quarterbacks today, you have to talk about the James Shaq Harrises of the world and the Marlon Briscoes of the world. Warren Moon is there, only black quarterback in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But what Doug did in that Super Bowl was so eye-opening for so many people. Not us. We knew we were always capable of doing those types of things. But quite frankly, for white NFL fans and for white executives and coaches, it was just not something that people in those roles thought that black quarterbacks, black men who played quarterback could accomplish. So I think there's a very strong argument for Doug because of what he did on that day and what a breakthrough seminal moment that was for him to be in the Hall of Fame as well.
Yeah.
Next step for us, we got to get Doug on the roundtable. Can we do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably, yeah.
Had we thought about it, we could have got him on today, but we'll, clearly, getting anybody into the Hall of Fame was it's like a presidential campaign. Um, but and another thing Mel Blount has said is that the problem, and you know this too, Jason, it was so great that you wrote your book and I did 30 Mile before. I remember when we met with for the first meeting about the book, met with Marlon Briscoe, of course, passed away, Warren Moon, Shaq, and Doug, and we jumped into a cab, and the cab driver, when we turned around and he saw it was Doug, his whole thing lit up. He said, "Oh man, Doug, I remember where I was," and he read chapter and verse of where he was during that Super Bowl, and it was kind of like for my parents, it was like a Joe Louis moment. Um, like for me, it was like a Muhammad Ali moment when he played Liston. I'm sure Jason, we all have these moments when it wasn't just about the sporting event, but what that meant for Black culture, Black history, and American history. And that's what Doug represents. Uh, that Super Bowl was so important. Remember, they were going against John Elway, and everything was on Elway, Elway, Elway. And for so many people, I think even Barack Obama may have mentioned it, that was just such a telling moment. And I think for no other reason than that, Doug should be in the Hall of Fame as a contributor because that was a very important piece of of American history, Black history, and certainly NFL history. So, um, I told Mel that yeah, I think that just like he brought it to me, he brought it. I think yeah, let's get it out there because I think it's really major. And the last thing I'll say is that you know how it is, man. The older, the younger voters, to a lot of voters, as they get younger, they have no idea of what that meant, and that's the problem. That's the problem with history in general and Black history in particular. People don't know why that was so important. And I think that is really important. That's why I'm glad, we're doing this to kind of bring it out there and put it out there that it is very important. And Doug is a very important cultural milestone.
I couldn't agree more, Bill. And you brought up Joe Louis and these other monumental events for the Black community. And for me, it was that Super Bowl. I was obviously a lot younger then, and I remember me and my brother watching it and thinking, well, we couldn't believe what we were seeing. That this Black man, I mean, even though I was a kid, I knew that Black quarterbacks were not supposed to be able to do this. That's what had become ingrained. And so I think when you talk about this league right now, look, Fritz Pollard, nobody remember what Fritz Pollard did. And
Right.
A campaign was launched primarily by Fritz Pollard's son, and Fritz Pollard got into the Hall of Fame. And I think there's a very strong argument to be made that because of what Doug accomplished and what that then led to down the road where we're at now, and I think that moment was so big and all that, I think you can make a very strong case for Doug being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And the NFL knows it too. I mean, everything they do around this time, trust me, you're going to see it today or leading up to the game. You're going to see, you know, uh, the Doug Williams comeback, and you're going to see clips of him. The NFL knows how important it is. They know how important it is. So I think for that alone, maybe not that alone, but he should be in it. But I'm just so happy that Mel brought it up. And how it is sometimes, man, as reporters and columns and all that, some things you just take for granted. I was thinking about it. And I was thinking, oh yeah, of course it makes sense. I felt bad because Marlon Briscoe, bless his soul, always felt too that he was kind of overlooked.
Yeah.
And to an extent he was. And that's the unfortunate part of history. But I think we can do something about Doug Williams. While he's here, he's among us, he's vibrant, and I definitely think there's something that we could do with Andscape, and we can put that on people's minds as we're doing today.
No argument for me, Bill.
Well,
so let's go.
Let's do it. Let's go. No, but thanks for jumping on, y'all, and thanks for talking about this. And then hopefully we can get a little bit something going. Maybe we can get Doug on the round table to talk about it himself.
That'd be great.
I would love to do it. Just before we go, as a very, very young child, I'm going to date myself with how old I was during the Doug Williams Super Bowl, probably 2 years old. I don't remember the exact game, but, Doug being a Grambling guy, me growing up in Louisiana, I remember seeing his face on the television. That's when I started to become kind of conscious of what was going on in our living rooms every year with the Super Bowl. You seeing Doug Williams and the joy on his face, and that's when I'm like, oh, okay. And I start paying attention to these guys that are important figures that my dad is bringing into my life, my mom is bringing into my life, whether it's Jerry Rice or Doug Williams or Roger Craig, were like some of the guys that I was watching, guys like that. And that's when it hit me like, oh, this is something that I care about. So I don't remember the specifics of the game, but I do remember these important figures in my life. And I think that that's something that you guys bring up. It's important to remind people how important these people were at that time. It was important for me to see a Doug Williams or a Jerry Rice and then go out in the yard with my friends and say, I'm Jerry Rice or I'm Barry Sanders, and we're doing all the moves and stuff. So again, it's important. And it's important for us to continue to tell those stories about how those people made us feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.